today, but he has torn up the country with his comedy. Put your hands together for Louie Centanni.
Hey, keep it going for Rand, ladies and gentlemen. Working hard for you guys, huh? Yeah. All right, you made it here. You did it. We're all here. Look at you. You got a rose on your table. You two on a date together for Valentine's Day. Very nice. Or is it father-son? Okay. It's getting weird real fast with this table. I'm glad to be here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I've had a really good week. I feel good. I think I look good for a 42-year-old man. Yeah, thank you. I'm 35. I know I have not aged as well as some of you in here. I'm reminded, I know I'm not old, but I'm reminded that I'm aging by how people talk to me recently. I went to the doctor for a back problem, and in my 20s he used to say things like, what kind of impact injury caused this? First question at 35, do you stretch before you sleep? Also, that's an insulting question, Doc. He said, all right, how did you hurt your back? And I said, leaning over to unplug my laptop at Starbucks. The worst place for me to realize I'm getting older at this point is going to get a haircut now. Because when you got a hairline like this, they will say anything to protect your feelings. I went in last time and she said, you know, Louie, if we cut your hair shorter, it'll look like you have more hair. No, it won't. Like, where else can you use that logic? You go to the dentist with a tooth missing, and he's like, yeah, but if we knock the rest of them out. It's true. It takes courage to go out of the house balding. I have to psych myself up. Like, you guys with your full heads of hair over here, you're a coward. It doesn't take any courage to leave the house with your scalp fully covered. You know what I'm talking about, man. Me and you, here's the thing, we have to have a personality. Like, I mean, to get a lady like that, like, I guarantee all of you in here tonight have a 5-minute conversation with him, and then have a 5-minute conversation with him. He's way more interesting. He has to be. One time I went to get a haircut and she just started cutting without even asking me. I was like, don't you need to know what I want? And she said, well, there's really not much we can do for you anymore. I am balding, not going into hospice. Oh. 35 means I was a child of the 90s. Clap your hands if you went through the 90s with me, folks, huh? 90s people? Yeah. 90s were fun, they were weird. I feel like the 90s, everything was trying to convince us that they were normal when they clearly weren't. Like, my favorite thing in the 90s was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Right? I grew up loving the Ninja Turtles, and as a kid it just made sense that 4 giant humanoid turtles would fight crime with ninjutsu. Like, I was like, yeah, that's a normal thing, right? And I'm dating an older woman now, and recently I went out to dinner with some of her friends, and they didn't know much about the Ninja Turtles. So I had to explain what the Ninja Turtles were to them, and nothing has ever made me sound crazier. I was not ready for the follow-up questions that I was getting. I was like, yeah, these giant tortoises learned karate and fight crime. And she said, so how'd they learn karate? And I said, a rat taught them. She said, oh, so like they all talk. And I said, yeah, the turtles talk like surfers. She said, is it on the West Coast? I said, no. They're in the sewers of New York. Please don't ask me what they eat. Don't ask me what they eat. Which, by the way, if you're gonna eat food in the sewer, I think you'd avoid finger foods, wouldn't you? Eating pizza in the sewers. Music in the 90s was super perverted. There were no rules for that, right? You could call your band anything you wanted in the 1990s. The first 2 CDs that my mommy bought me when I was a kid were by bands called the Bare Naked Ladies and the Cherry Poppin' Daddies. Kids music. And the lyrics, like compared to the 60s. In the 60s there was a horse song called Wild Horses, all right? Rolling Stones. It's a beautiful song, right? So beautiful. Wild horses can't drag me away from the person I love. We had a horse song too in the 90s. It was called Pony by Genuine. If you're horny, let's do it. Ride it, my pony. I don't think he spent a lot of time on the farm. And I get that they don't have to be poetry, but we had a song called the Thong Song. Like, John Lennon once wrote, "Imagine there's no heaven." And then Cisco wrote, "Let me see that thong, da thong, thong, thong." But my favorite one had to be, it was called Too Close by Next. Played at all my high school dances. If you don't know it, I'll sing a little bit. It's about two people dancing, and halfway through the chorus, the lady sings to the man, "Step back, you're dancing kinda close. I feel a little poke coming through." The number one song in the 60s was called "I Wanna Hold Your Hand." In 98 it was "There's a boner against my leg and I'm not sure how I feel about it." Our board games didn't hold up very well in the 90s. You guys remember the board game Operation? Remember your parents paid $20 and you got PTSD? Was there ever anything more terrifying than Operation? Let's start with the game board, which was literally just a grown naked man. And 5-year-olds had to dig his vital organs out of his body. Like, how intense was the guy who pitched that game? Yeah, it's a surgery game. Okay. What part of his body do they need to give surgery to? All of it at once. Oh, all right. Does he have to be totally naked? What if we just make him fat enough to cover the dick? It's a little more kid-friendly, I guess. Wouldn't taking all of his organs out kill him? What if we just leave his eyes wide open the whole time? Okay, so if the kids make a mistake, do we at least teach them about the human body? Or we shock them with a small car battery? Put one in every store. The other one that didn't age very well was Guess Who. Do you guys remember board game Guess Who? Taught us a lot about racial profiling, didn't it? There was no diversity on a Guess Who board. You could either be white, you could be light-skinned Latino, or you could be a black woman named Anne. It's the whole world of Hasbro. I feel like you couldn't make that game in 2020 the same way that they made it back then. Like, because the world's too polarized now. We need two versions, a liberal Guess Who and a conservative Guess Who. Both of them would just take way too long to play. Like in the liberal version, you have to ask questions like, is your character biracial, gender fluid? And then everyone would judge you for assuming. But in the conservative version, you have questions like, if your character moved to my neighborhood, what would happen to property values?